With the video game industry being the largest art form in the world, we are seeing even more resources which could be used to solve real-world problems being poured into producing even more graphically detailed of what are supposed to be works of art, but have long since been dominated by the mindset that they are a product. So instead of being a vehicle for a delivery of a particular vision with meaning, it's used as a means of, in exchange for your money which you had to waste real-life hours working to get, you receive a series of unfulfilling tasks to keep the motor systems of your brain doing busy work. Most gamers are aware AAA games have no soul, and that if soul and good game design combined with fresh ideas is what you are seeking, then popular indie games are where you should look. This strategy does mean, however, that in order to stave off the destruction of the industry that the cannibalistic AAA games devs would cause, for every darling indie success, there's a dozen other also good games that get left as an unknown in the ether of the internet history, and it's up to gamers like myself to tell people about the hidden gems we find. Like, no one else is going to talk about it, so I might as well be the one to. After all, my original vision for my channel was making unique videos that have not already been made by others. Because with the most critically acclaimed modern titles out there like Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom being badly designed, but still being the most financially successful despite that, people need to speak out about this state of affairs. At almost no point in playing Elden Ring did I have fun, and even though I pirated the game, I wish there was a way I could make the devs pay me for my time I wasted with it. That's just how bad it is. And the only feeling I have for Tucked now is regret of my $100 poorly spent, when that money would have been much better served and appreciated going to the dev XRY Echo for his free bare-bones JRPG I'm here to tell you about. That's not made in RPG Maker, thank goodness. It really pains me, as a nobody who cares about the artistic integrity of video games, to see everyone give titles like those the most undeserving of praise, while little indie projects like XRY's shows the potential to be better than what Elden Ring or Tears of the Kingdom turned out as. And note, when I say better, I don't mean more grand. I mean, has a fun idea that it sets out to execute well, but will never shine because it is unknown, because it is a passion project, which is unpolished, because it does not have any financial support, because it is unknown. You see how that vicious cycle works? When all it would take is 1/1,000,000th of the attention and money players have given to either ER or Tucked for this game to be given its chance. This is the reason why I'm making this review. Its name is Crystal Wish Classroom Dungeon, and yes, I will give you spoiler warnings when I get there. As of course I already said, Classroom Dungeon is a JRPG, so the journey the characters go through is the main reason to play it. Especially since it was CWCD's narrative and character that got me emotionally invested to the point that I felt compelled to make this review. And it all revolves around Crystal Wish's star character, Mugara. So we press start and meet our main characters, Serena, Rosalind, and Meg. Serena has come to the school of her younger sister Quilia to bring some schoolwork she has forgotten at home. Upon arriving though, Serena comes to find out that the front doors are locked, and there appears to be no one at the school. Meg, being the fitness fanatic, takes her shot to knock harder on the doors to get someone's attention, which she does so hard she breaks the door open. The girls head to Serena's sister's classroom, but still not a soul has been found in sight, until suddenly the girls find Serena's sister crying for help as another strange-looking little girl appears between them. This girl says something about Quilla knowing these were the rules, and before anyone realizes what's happening, a flash of light and Quilla is gone. Rosalind stating she was just sucked into the crystal hanging around the neck of this mysterious girl, who finally notices and greets you. This is Mugara, and she is a game genie, which is different from a regular genie. For when a game genie is summoned, they can be challenged to play any game that the challenger can imagine. Win the game and the genie will grant you a wish. Lose the game and the game genie will get to make her own wish. Sounds simple enough. But man, do I find this concept cool. And I can't believe I've never heard anyone else come up with this idea. It was so fresh to me that every time Megura would mention she is a game genie, I would imagine that I was looking at a floating talking Nintendo cheating device game genie, lol. Of course, the real intrigue comes from the way it works, because when a Game Genie game is created, the magic governing that game is more powerful than a regular genie's magic, to ensure that the game will follow certain parameters of having a win state, that both the challenger and the genie have a fair chance at winning, and so that the results of the winner's wish cannot be undone by regular genie magic. And this theme is something that will be pervasive throughout the entire journey. And unfortunately for our soon-to-be heroines, Mugara informs them that Serena's sister challenged her to a role-playing game, lost, and for Mugara's victory wish, Quillia and her friends will now reside in Mugara's genie crystal, so she can continue to have fun playing games with him for the rest of eternity. Then Rosalind chimes in, asking Mugara if she is the reason there is no one else in the school right now, and Mugara confirms this, stating that it was part of the very interesting game Quillia challenged her to. This leads Serena to realize what Rosalind is thinking, that the school has not yet returned to normal because the game has not technically ended yet, which Mugara also realizes is correct, meaning that it is still possible in this moment for her wish to be reversed. Without hesitation, Serena challenges our little game genie to the match they just played, and while Mugara says it is not common practice to add more players to a game after it has already started, this is what she lives for, and thus accepts Serena's challenge. And of course, Meg and Rosalind cannot let their friend risk herself alone, so they join with Serena. And with another flash of light...
You are now entering the Valley of Fire.
Oh wait, sorry, no, that's the wrong game. Although it sure did fit well, didn't it? So, quite the strong, quick, and well-paced opening for a quaint indie JRPG, wouldn't you agree? In the first few minutes, we establish a normal setting, characters, plot, adventure, and motivations, all done in a unique way, and that's thanks to our many centuries old petite genie, who despite being magic, is still behaving like a normal reasonable person, which to me really sells the player's ability to suspend their disbelief for this introduction, and for all of what is to come. Now is the first spoiler warning. This warning is only for the theming and not the story, but I would encourage the listener that if my explanation of the game thus far has left any impression of interest on you, then now is the best time to stop watching my review and go play the game for yourself, as there are lots of fun novelty and surprises baked into this little passion project, which of course would greatly help your immersion if you were to experience it blind. Next, we will be delving into the classroom dungeon of this Crystal Wish, and we'll be going over the setting and gameplay. So stop the video now if you think you might want to see what it has to offer for yourself. Alright, ready? Here we go. After blacking out, we awaken to find our new heroine still in the classroom, but something is off. First, there is another person here they recognize as Quillia's class teacher, Miss Durabuona, but this woman says they have mistaken her for someone else, and that her name is Sensei, that she is a warrior, and now she must depart to go and try and rescue someone. Next, they realize their new attire. Serena is wearing a ninja suit, Meg a china dress, and Rosalind has some metal boots and gauntlets now. Next, Rosalind tells Serena to try focusing on the wall on the other side of the classroom, which she does and is shocked that it seems to be a mile away in the distance now, which doesn't make sense. Then Meg sarcastically points out it makes as much sense as standing on a huge bridge made out of giant desks, which they currently appear to be on. Serena is once again surprised Pikachu face. She asks if this is the genie's magic, but why did she make everything so huge? Though Rosalind, once again as the quiet observant one, already has it figured out and says she honestly fears the classroom didn't get any bigger than before. Suddenly, Meg is scared. Serena asks what's wrong. Meg tells them to turn around, and then the girls come face to face with... Best girl, best girl, best girl, best girl, best girl, best girl! I mean, a Mugara so giant your third-person camera can only see half of her body, is standing beside the giant desk. She has to crouch down to greet her new players with her big dumb smile plastered on her non-animated face. I really love her goofy smile. Now with a real surprised Pikachu face, Serena exclaims that Mugara is huge! Mugara looks upset though and says she's not huge. Rosalind interjects that they are now the tiny ones here. But Mugara says that is also incorrect and tells the girls to try and get into character. Serena does not understand and asks why did Mugara shrink them if they were supposed to play a game. But Mugara becomes delighted now to inform them that this in fact is the game. This is what Serena's sister challenged her to, a role-playing game. Serena remembers her sister is indeed an avid RPG fan, but complains to Megara that they can't do anything at their current tiny size, which annoys Megara again, saying that they're not tiny and to stop ruining the immersion. What, did you expect her to spawn a TV and game console to play the RPG on? Gather some pens and papers to play tabletop, perhaps?
No! Whoa!
This is Game Genie time, baby, and that means any game you can imagine, Megara can make a reality. And by reality, it means you get to experience a reality. A hands-on approach, if you will. She cheerily explains, you humans may have those boring ways of playing RPGs, but this is the way I do things. You'll be able to experience the adventure in person. Isn't that exciting? You remember in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, the first match against Bakura in the Shadow Realm where Yugi and friends got turned into the summoned monsters of their favorite cards? It's just like that. Instead of playing the tabletop, you are the tabletop RPG now. And only after doing all of this does Mugara finally explain the rules to our unwitting heroines. This is an RPG they will have to finish to win the challenge, but if all their HP drops to 0, it will be game over and Mugara will win. She will be taking the role of the Game Master Genie. She will be making the maps and events for you to play in and guide you on your quest. And to start, you must go rescue the class teacher playing the character of Sensei, whom they met earlier, who failed her rescue mission and got caught herself. Serena asks Mugara why she got Miss Durabuana involved. And amusingly, Mugara responds clearly not amused, saying, "What kind of silly question is that? An RPG needs NPCs, of course. That's part of the basics." So she temporarily borrowed the people from the school to play the roles of the NPCs and enemies and made them believe they are actually part of this magical RPG. Meg sarcastically jokes that is quite the light way of putting kidnapping and brainwashing. But with having no other choice, our new players set off on this miniature grand adventure. So now we can clearly see the parameters of CD and the RPG within it, that we actually have a well thought out narrative which is able to achieve several conditions that all fit into a cohesive gaming experience. First, it establishes the somewhat serious, somewhat lighthearted tone as it puts an extraordinary twist on a relatable set of ideas, with the magical kidnapping of a loved one, where the presentation to the player is a self-aware pretend but also real scenario, as opposed to being another actually constructed fantasy RPG world. One way that I thought to describe it is, it gains the benefits of being an isekai without the drawbacks of being one. Instead, CD is just that, dungeoning with basic classroom objects, which helps immensely for the development of this one man's free time project, as it allows him the leisure of copy-pasting assets, like how Elden Ring copy-pastes its assets, so he can free up time for other areas of development, while also providing an in-universe contextual reason for why the player will be seeing repeat asset copy-pasting that allows the player to maintain their suspension of disbelief, unlike how in Elden Ring their copy-pasting of the assets and the story bosses completely ruins the player's suspension of disbelief. Again, context is everything, especially for me, and this is what makes CWCD so fun to experience, because its presentation is actually a cute adventure, just like the old animes we used to watch as kids, such as Cardcaptor Sakura or Inuyasha, heck, even Hamtaro can count. In this anime, Best Girl is a normal person like the other main girls. She isn't over the top in her expressions, explains herself fairly, and is okay with even having some fun at other people's expense. But rather than her doing that in the spirit of she likes to make herself physically outmatched so she can torture people and derive pleasure from their struggles and suffering, it's done in... how can I put this? As a lifelong gamer, I can really appreciate a character who enjoys having a dedication to adhere to the spirit of fair play in a constructed game setting where the enjoyment comes from the thrill of the struggle in overcoming a balanced challenge. Because while the danger of failure and death are present, in this particular game it's more of a background effect rather than an ever-looming existential threat, because of how the game characters themselves are also playing a semi-pretend game. So that makes it become more like a pleasant thrill of overcoming a serious challenge with serious consequences for you not succeeding. You know, the same as why people skydive and rock climb. It's the balance and the difficulty relative to the narrative that is crucial for making the immersion work here, because it's not the case that you are busy trying to use your cognition to figure out, how do I overcome this when being tabletop size makes everything impossible, especially when I don't have any external control. So speaking of balance, let's talk gameplay finally. As you can see, our game characters and world are fully rendered in 3D. CWCD has just the bare minimum of everything it needs to be a fully complete JRPG, which, by the way, is already an extremely impressive feat on its own, as it's the hardest genre for indie devs to make a game for because of how long this type of game is. Which is also why XRY hopes one day, if his games become successful enough, he will be able to remake it. Our only two actions are to interact with event circles, where each dungeon has a different mini, no pun intended, mechanic, and to avoid enemy encounters, which thankfully are not random, but also present on the desk dungeon with you, and have been generously given a visible cone of aggro. Though, by the way, what's with the Five Nights at Freddy's level of audio jump scare you get when you trigger an enemy? So you have the non-turn-based minigame of learning enemy patrols if you want to avoid encounters, which there is no penalty for because, as strange as it may seem to say out loud, there is no experience points to be gained in this JRPG. Instead, the reason for battling becomes the challenge of managing your special points versus getting items you will be rewarded for winning. The battle system is similar to Pokemon, but still different enough to have its own unique identity. You have a turn order based off the speed stat, where you will select an action when it's your girl's turn, and each heroine has their own set of special moves that you get to choose which to unlock with each boss you defeat Mega Man style. In addition to that, your girls can also use the power of what's called the henshin from the defeated bosses to transform into different classes, changing their stats, abilities, and of course their looks. And what's more, using this power does not cost you an action, so there's no downside to changing your team's composition to suit the status of the battle. Fun stuff. And come to think of it, this allows for several ways in which the player can try to do a self-imposed hard mode challenge. Aside from that, you have the menu where you can do the crucial actions of healing outside of battle, changing the battle speed, which you must hold a button to utilize, and of course to save, which is another remarkable thing to me, just how well made this one-man JRPG is, because the game only crashed a couple times during my playthrough. So this is my friendly reminder to all players to save early, save often. And that's it for the gameplay, which despite being the bare minimum, such as lacking most sound effects and the music being short and repetitive, though thematically nice sounding, the pacing is done just well enough that it never feels like it drags on, and the maps are small, again no pun intended, so you're never more than a few fights away from your next boss battle, which while they are all mechanically the same, that does make them easy to balance well, and each one has a different ability to keep things interesting. As is, I was able to defeat every boss on my first try, though for each one I still did feel the intimidating pressure that comes with the nature of being a video game boss. And this concludes my spoiler-free first half of this review. Now, if that was all there was to it, then I would not be making this video. But as I said in the beginning, it is what happens to the characters in the story that elevated Crystal Wish Classroom Dungeon to being something special to me I wanted to share. So come join me in my second half of this review if you want to hear about the emotional roller coaster this small adventure put me through. Best girl, best girl, best girl, best girl, best girl, best girl!